And now we're going to dig a little deeper into why the murder of Renee Nicole Good is resonating across that community. For years, the city has felt the impact of political violence, police brutality, and gun violence. In 2015, 2 police officers shot and killed an unarmed man, Jamar Clark, sparking days of protest across the city. A year later, protests again erupted after video showed a police officer shoot and kill Philando Castile during a traffic stop with his girlfriend and her 4-year-old daughter watching inside the car. Then in 2020, the world saw police officer Derek Chauvin forcefully kneel on George Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes, killing him. Floyd's death triggered massive protest across the country. In June 2025, a person impersonating law enforcement murdered State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband in their home. And 2 months later, in August, a gunman killed 2 young children and wounded 17 others as they were praying during a school-wide morning mass. Now, just 2 weeks into 2026, the community is grappling with the fatal shooting of 37-year-old Renee Good, as well as the Trump administration's ongoing immigration crackdown. Joining us now is Minnesota State Representative Aisha Gomez. She represents the district where Renee Good lived and was killed, and Michelle Norris, MS Now senior contributing editor. Michelle, we're going to start with you because you grew up in Minneapolis, and clearly this city has gone through so much over the recent years. What are you hearing from the community about how they're responding to this latest tragedy?
I'm here at Powderhorn Park, which is just a little bit east of where Renee Nicole Good was killed. There were thousands of people. The park's pretty quiet right now, but just an hour ago, there were thousands of people here who braved the cold temperatures and the flurries because Minnesotans are used to the cold, but sadly, as you noted in your introduction, they're also used to protests that follow aggressive police activity. And a lot of the people who came out today were, yes, mourning the death that happened on the 3400 block of Portland Avenue, but they're also here to try to defend a way of life. Many of the people who were involved in the protests felt like they're trying to protect the idea of democracy, protect the idea of safety. A lot of people said that they were here to protect their neighbors and to defend their neighbors and look out for their neighbors. And when you heard them talk, you think, does everybody have an immigrant that lives next door to them? No, it's more of a point of view in Minnesota, a way of seeing the world, that you're part of a community and you look out for your neighbors. Just to put a fine point on the numbers here, Senator Klobuchar noted earlier today that there are so many immigration enforcement officers here now in the state that the number in the cities outnumbers the police force, the combined police force in Minneapolis and St. Paul. And what people are seeing is a much more aggressive brand of immigration enforcement. Minnesota's a border state. Canada's just north. So border patrols have been here before, but they've never seen this kind of aggressive policing, men wearing camouflage, snatching people off the streets, and in some cases engaging with the monitors, the people that are following them to monitor their activity in a very aggressive way, sometimes carrying AR guns that carry pepper pellets and firing them at very close range. There's a very, very aggressive brand of immigration enforcement that people are not comfortable with. And so they're very worried about the way of life, and they're very worried about what will happen if the protests continue and if they do not remain forceful. We're now in several nights of protests. You've seen what happened last night where people were protesting outside where some of the immigration agents were staying. It was a little bit rowdy, it was a little bit loud, but it was relatively peaceful. And every time when the sun falls, people are worried that their prayers for peace might not be answered. There are outside agitators that come in. That's what they saw after the death of George Floyd, not far from here. And the city was inflamed, and they do not want to see that again.
Representative Gomez, obviously we are seeing an outpouring of grief and anger at what is happening in your city and in the Twin Cities more broadly. What are your constituents asking leaders like you to do on their behalf to keep them safe?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me. You talked and Michelle talked, really clearly about, about the feelings here, about the experiences that we've been through. and about the community that we have and that we love so much and we're fighting to defend. And so, my constituents, we're a citizen legislature. My constituents expect of me, right relationship with community and, to show up in hard times in all of the ways that I can. And I and others are in leadership positions are certainly trying to do that. These are unprecedented times. I mean, we have a U.S. citizen being murdered in the middle of the street. These masked, unidentified, secret agents who have basically invaded our city, who are intimidating, business owners, just regular people going about their life. They prevented a doctor from coming and even rendering basic medical care to Renee as she lay bleeding out in the streets. They blocked ambulances from coming and rendering basic medical care to her. If you saw the new video yesterday or the day before from the perspective of the officer, you heard somebody on that call her an effing bitch after she was shot in the face 3 times in the United States of America with no crime, no trial, no nothing. And so, I think that our country just truly is in a state of emergency. And that's what I'm hearing from my constituents is we are in an emergency. And that's why people are out in the street. And that's why, that's why people are continuing to do the work that Renee was doing to protect our neighbors amidst this major escalation. I mean, they went and pepper sprayed kids at a high school dismissal right after they went from the murder scene to go to a high school dismissal to pepper spray kids and educators and parents as they were trying to get home from school. They're in hospitals. They are violating even our spaces that should be safe for our students, for people seeking medical care. I mean, it's unprecedented times, it feels like.
Yeah, Michelle, to Representative Gomez's point, there is such a dehumanization taking place, and we don't know if they were saying that effing terminology about her, Renee Good, or about the woman that was also there that was trying to enter the vehicle, because the language of dehumanization is just so prevalent in everything that they are doing, talking about Somalis as garbage, Mexicans as rapists and criminals. And I wanted to play for you this soundbite from the Attorney General of Minnesota, Keith Ellison, just today. Take a listen.
That is the massive escalation of this administration against our state, the state of Minnesota, as they have done in Illinois, Portland, and Los Angeles. This massive escalation, telling these agents that Somali people are garbage, saying that Mexican Americans are rapists and drug dealers, saying all these hateful things, is the policy reason why Renee Good is dead.
Some very strong words there, Michelle, from the Attorney General about how the rhetoric and the dehumanization, as we open the show with tonight, advertisements to recruit, evoking some of the worst rhetoric this country has ever seen. And it leads to the deadly consequences that we see playing out on the streets.
Language is so important right now. Language can bring people together. It is how we can find each other. It is also how we can divide each other. And we're hearing the language of division right now. And if you're listening to the way people are talking about this and the sound bites from state officials and the sound bites from people who showed up here today, it's the language of war also. People are talking about this as an invasion, as an occupation. This really is a state of emergency, and it feels like we are very much in a tinderbox. America is a very diverse country. Immigration is something that we do have to deal with, but I don't think that, even the people who supported immigration reform, it will be interesting to see what the polls show soon about this, whether they actually condone what they're seeing here. And I spoke to to Attorney General Ellison earlier here at Powderhorn. And one of the things that he said is that people watching this may be watching this right now in the comfort of their living room or in their kitchen or wherever they happen to be. And they may think, well, that's just happening in Minnesota. It doesn't impact me here. They're clearly using this as the federal government, the Trump administration, is clearly using this as a training ground for militaristic action. And they won't stop here. We've seen it in Los Angeles. We've seen it in Illinois. We're now seeing it in Minnesota. And it won't stop here. It will move someplace else. And one of the things that the people of Minnesota and the officials of Minnesota seem to understand in every conversation that I've had is that this is being used as a training ground for militaristic action. They are trying to use this as a proving ground to show that there are ways to peacefully stand up to that, to peacefully confront that, to peacefully perhaps push back against this idea and to create something that is a little bit more sane, a little bit more humane. But, Eamon, you're absolutely right. The language that is being used right now is a way to stoke the idea that you are to fear someone who doesn't look like you, to fear someone who maybe came from another country. And in a place like America, that's particularly interesting. I just want to make one other point, though. This happened on January 7th. And when you're talking about the language of tyranny, we should remember the language that was used around January 6th, 5 years ago. And, you know, the kids talk about 6, 7. It's interesting to me that the 6th and the 7th, the January 6th, January 7th, these two dates will forever be tethered in a really interesting way that I think we're going to be examining for a very long time in looking at the ways that the narrative has been shaped to suit the people in power. And how people who live closer to the ground have to figure out how to push back against that, to hold on to some semblance of sanity and democracy and humanity in America.
To that point that Michelle brings up about narrative and the sort of shaping of the facts on the ground, Representative Gomez, I want to ask you quickly, in addition to new video from the officer's perspective, there is new video released by DHS taken by a bystander that they claim shows that Nicole Good was, quote, stalking agents on the ground. And I'm wondering if you can respond to that claim, the way that you've seen the administration. You know, on the one hand, they're claiming that there is going to be an independent federal investigation here. On the other hand, the White House, the DHS coming out and basically saying, well, actually, the investigation's over because we've already cleared this person of any wrongdoing. And we're saying that time and time again in public now. What do you make of the way that they're developing this argument and crafting a narrative around this woman?
Well, I mean, the federal government has just demonstrated over and over again that they cannot be trusted, that they're not interested in the rule of law, that they're not interested in the truth. I haven't seen the latest propaganda video from DHS. I don't care to. I don't believe that it's going to make me mistrust the evidence that I have seen with my own eyes, that I have heard from the mouths of my just incredibly distressed and traumatized constituents who watched a masked federal agent execute someone in their street in the morning, during the morning commute. You know, I think that Michelle makes some very important points about this being a proving ground, and it's not just about the accelerated militarized tactics of these secret police. I believe that it's bigger than that. I believe that our democracy is being tested right now. You know, does due process exist in our country anymore? Does a person who's accused of a crime have the right, guaranteed under the Constitution, to answer their accusers, or are they going to be executed in the street? I mean, that's what is literally in front of us right now. It's very serious and dark times in Minneapolis and for us as a nation.
Minnesota State Representative Aisha Gomez and Michelle Norris, thank you so much for joining us tonight.